Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Hope everybody's having a great Tuesday afternoon. The weather report here in Southern California and the Marietta Temecula Valley is cloudy, not too cold, but cloudy. This is Bill, Coach Bill, with Weight Loss Made Easy. And today's subject is actually is going to be a training video for those that are doing my 90-day online personal coaching. Because I want to explain to them what a refeed day is when they're doing the 3 protocols that we have them doing. And kind of giving an update, what are those 3 protocols is, of course, we're drinking the hydrogen-rich water. As you see, I've got a new way to carry my water around here, and the reason for this is I keep breaking my plastic bottles that were designed to keep the hydrogen in the water from dissipating so fast, but I keep dropping them and breaking them. Well, I got these water bottles that I share my water with to people who want to try it, and these don't break. I've dropped them, I've hit them, I've dropped weights on them, and they just don't break. So now this is what I'm using. The second protocol that we use to help our bodies get into fat adaptation is the intermittent and prolonged fasting. And then the third one is the anti-inflammatory diet, which many of you know as being a ketogenic diet. So those are the 3 protocols that we use for our weight loss program. And also these 3 protocols are for our therapeutic intermittent and prolonged fasting and therapeutic ketosis, or our therapeutic anti-inflammatory diet if you guys have some kind of a medical issue. But in our program, a lot of questions have come up lately on what is called a refeed day. So when I'm setting up my clients, you know what, guys, just before I get started here, I want you go to those of you that are watching me on Facebook, go to my YouTube channel, type in Bill Mabry, subscribe to it, and then there's a bell up there. Hit that bell and you'll get notified of my new videos that go on YouTube. And those that are actually watching this on YouTube, same thing, hit that bell and you'll be notified. So back on the topic here, we're talking about, I introduced what they call a refeed day. And sometimes people who are doing the protocols are asking me questions. I go, do I have to do a refeed day? Well, what a refeed day is that when you're doing intermittent fasting or prolonged fasting or a ketogenic diet, when you're combining the two, see, my next video is going to explain combining the intermittent fasting and the ketogenic or the anti-inflammatory diet, how they both have something in common, but yet they're separate from each other, and I'm going to explain why. But when you're doing this, so your calorie intake, you're restricting your calories, obviously. Now, that word restricting your calories, don't get all uptight or excited, or you start putting some defense on it, or going, okay, there we go, we're going to restrict our diet like the normal Western diet. No, it's not like restricting the old Western diet way. It's not like where your coach or your client or your health coach is going to tell you, well, we got to cut your calories down and you got to do more carbs. No, I'm not talking about that. And the reason for that is because I'm talking about a higher fat, moderate to low protein, and a 5% carbohydrate diet, which means there's a whole lot more calories in the higher fat foods that you're consuming during these protocols or during the anti-inflammatory diet. And so you're actually getting either as much or more calories than you really think you are, because fat is has a lot more dense calories in it. And so when you're doing an intermittent fasting, even though if you're doing a 16-8 or an 18-6 or a 20-4, and you're only eating maybe 2 meals a day, but they're high fat, you're thinking to yourself, well, that's not enough calories to carry me through the day, and that's not enough calories for me to be working out. Well, you have to remember that the object of these 3 protocols and your goal is to become fat adapted. You guys have heard me say this. That is your goal. So your goal is to switch your body from burning the carbohydrates you're consuming 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times a day for energy to switching over to burning your body fat. Now remember what I said. Higher fat foods have more calories. So if you're doing intermittent fasting and you've taught your body to switch over to body fat, do you think maybe you're absorbing some of the calories out of those fats that you're storing up that you want to get rid of anyway? Absolutely. Okay, so this will be explained in my next video. But what I'm getting at here is why I put a refeed day in there, which means a refeed day is a day that you pick, that my clients will pick, that either is after church and their family get together and they go out for meals, or it's a family dinner on Sundays afternoon, or whatever day you pick. It's a day where you're going to actually eat more calories and starchy carbs, basically. So that's a day that you're allowed to have starchy carbs, because on my protocol, especially the first 90 days, you're going to be off the high glycemic starchy carbs. All starchy carbs, a matter of fact, and all fruits, just so that we can get your body into that state of fat adaptation or fat burning. We got to get you there in the first 90 days. But you do have one day a week where you can take a meal and you can have the starchy foods, the mashed potatoes and gravy or whatever you want, or have bread, or have pasta, or whatever. And for us, for me and Emily, our refeed day is going to be on Sundays because that's our church day, and so I'll have I'll have oatmeal and sourdough toast about 9 o'clock. I don't fast at all. There's no fasting involved that day at all. So that's when I'm going to have my starchy carbs, like it could be low glycemic starchy carbs like oatmeal and sourdough toast, or if at lunchtime it might be pancakes, or it might be whatever. If I'm going to have pasta for lunch after church, whatever, that's a day. Now, we start our fasting after we eat our last meal on Sunday. We always do a 24-hour fast the following day. And our fasting will start after that meal, because by the time dinner time comes up, we're too full anyway. So we're just going to go ahead and fast our 24 hours. Because why? Is because we're putting our body into a state of autophagy, which is anti-aging, anti-inflammatory. And that's what we want as old people. Okay? So anyway, so a refeed day is the day when you're going to actually introduce some starchy carbohydrates or higher carb foods that day. Now the question is, do you have to do a refeed every week? No, you don't. You don't have to do it. You can do it every other week, or you can do it every 2 weeks, or you can do it every 3 weeks. But what happens is your body is going to tell you if it's actually going to need some type of a starchy carbohydrate or a day of higher carbs. And my wife, Emily, because she is so in tune to her body, she actually understands or knows when it's time for her to actually increase her starches. And so she'll do a sweet potato, which is very low glycemic. What I mean by low glycemic, it doesn't raise the insulin above base. It doesn't shoot it up like refined sugars or the higher glycemic foods like white rice or white bread or cakes, stuff like that, pies, stuff like that. That spikes the insulin. And those of you that follow me know the whole idea of becoming fat adapted is controlling insulin, which is a hormone that's designed to store fat. Well, we don't want that insulin to go above a certain level. We want to keep it low as much as we can. And that's where the low glycemic starches comes into also, if you're going to be doing a refeed day. Now, for me, I do a refeed day every single week, and I do mine at noon or after church, because that's the day I have my carbs. Some people do it every other week. It's your choice. It's how you feel. Now, if you want to, I like the mixing it up. I like to do different protocols. Like, for example, this week, Emily and I are doing alternating fasting, which means Monday we did our 24-hour fast. Today I'm I'm not fasting at all, but I'm doing a ketogenic diet all day. So I may have 4 or 5 or 6 different types of foods, mostly snacks, but I still have my main meals at 12 o'clock and 6 is my last meal. But I might have 3 or 4 different keto snacks during that. Like, for example, I'll probably, after this, I'll have a couple of my angel eggs. Okay, so that's probably what I'll be doing. But as far as the refeed day, what that means is that we're actually putting in, because your body actually needs a certain amount of glycogen or glucose in the muscles. Now, a lot of people don't realize, they think that in order to get into ketosis or in order to be fat adapted, you have to actually burn all the glycogen or glucose out of the muscle and the liver. And that's not true, because actually your body needs a certain amount of glucose or glycogen. And your carbs are actually your vegetable carbs, your starchy carbs. That is converted into glucose, which then is put into your muscle as glycogen and stored for later use for energy. Okay? Well, the body does need some amount of glycogen throughout the day. The brain especially needs is operating about 18% of glycogen, or it needs glucose, even though the rest of it, the brain loves the ketones. So what that means is that most people think that you have to deplete all the glucose out of the muscle and all the glucose out of the liver. See, the liver is where you produce the blood ketones that is considered your rocket fuel, that is fueling the body, giving you more energy, and actually is helping you burn fat, and it's actually helping to naturally detox you, and also it's food for the brain. It makes it actually, when you're in ketosis, you're going to be much more aware of things. Your clarity is going to be a lot better as you get fat adapted. But what happens here is that people think that you got to deplete the glucose or glycogen in both the liver and the muscle. Now, you don't. You're going to have a certain amount of glycogen in your muscle. But in the liver, yes, you do. In order to produce rocket fuel, or the best source of energy, or take the body fat from your stored body fat, convert it into blood ketones, you do have to deplete the glucose or the carbohydrates in the liver. And that's why we're doing an anti-inflammatory diet, which is 80% good fat, 15% low or moderate protein, and 5% carbs, mainly vegetables, because we're keeping our carbs low, very, very low. Now, some of you might think, well, I need all this, I need a lot of carbs in order to work out. No, you don't. You think you do, but you don't, because like I said, you're going to store a certain amount of glucose or glycogen in that muscle. Well, then the other person who is analyzing all this is saying, well, if I'm only doing a 5% low-carb diet, how am I storing any glycogen or glucose in that muscle to be used for the brain, because the brain needs it? Or what about when I'm working out to get that pump? I need the glycogen in the muscle to get that pump. Well, you have stored glycogen. Even though you have glycogen or glucose in the muscle, as long as the liver is depleted from glucose, you will produce ketones. So here we go. You have glycogen in the muscle. You're still going to be in ketosis when it's the liver. It's not about it's about the liver, not about the muscle. Okay? Now, also what's crazy, the body is not stupid. And so, like I said, the brain needs a certain amount of glucose to operate. And the muscle is going to have a certain amount, let's say 18% sticking in, stored up there. Well, if you're on a low-fat or a low-carb diet, and you start using up that savings account of glycogen, how do you replenish it? Well, there's a few ways. The body is so smart that even though you're on a very low-carb diet, it actually will convert protein into glucose, which is then stored as glycogen, which is then brought the scale back up for storage to be used for later use. That's why people who ask me questions on how do you guys stay pumped? How do you stay pumped when you're training if you're depleted from glycogen? Or I'm not. I have stored up glycogen anyway in my muscle, and it's going to be there all the time. Well, basically that's what a refeed day is doing, 1 day a week, is I'm actually consuming higher amounts of carbs or higher calories that day, and I'm converting those higher amounts of carbohydrates into glucose, which then is stored as glycogen. Well, the next question is Bill, okay, if you're eating that much carbohydrates on Sunday, then that's going to throw you out of ketosis. That's right, it is. I don't care, because that's my day of having whatever I want as far as starchy carbs or whatever. I mean, even desserts. That's a day I like to have a dessert also. Yes, it does throw me out of ketosis, but that doesn't matter to me. And why is that? It's because I'm fat adapted, and that's what I'm telling you guys. That's your goal. Your goal is to teach your body to switch from carbohydrates as its primary fuel to burning the body fat as its primary fuel. So that means that if I'm eating my high carb diet at noon or 1:30, and then I'm so full, I don't want to eat at 6 because I'm not hungry, and I go 24 hours, how quickly am I getting back into fat adaptation? Well, because I'm fat adapted, I'm getting back very fast because I'm not eating dinner. You know, because I'm eating up, I ate at 1:30, and I'm not consuming any calories for 24 straight hours. And because we're fat adapted, the carbohydrates or the calories or the glucose or the glycogen that I ate that was stored in my muscle and liver on that day, my body is burning it up very fast, and by 8 or 9 or 10 o'clock at night, I'm back into fat burning, I'm back into ketosis. So that if I'm doing a 24-hour fast where I'm not consuming any calories, then I'm getting into a deep state of autophagy. And that's where I want to be, especially when I'm training. We train on an empty stomach so we can go deep into autophagy to produce more growth hormones, and besides, we want our growth hormones to stay as high as possible all day long, okay? And so by what I'm saying here is that those of you that are looking, that want to understand more about this, you know, you can contact me, message me. I'll send you some information on our 90-day online personal coaching. This is some of the stuff you're going to learn about this. You'll learn the science behind this. And so there's a question here that somebody says, well, give me an example of what you mean by a low glycemic starch. Okay, I can do that. I got my computer right here. Now, I have a list of vegetables. I have a list of fruits, low glycemic fruits. I have a list of low glycemic starchy foods that I have in my recipes that my clients get. So it's kind of like a roadmap on what to do or examples of what to eat so that there's no confusion. They can even go out to dinner and they have my recipes there that has the roadmap of what they can order. But I'm going to go ahead and give you just a couple examples of what I mean by low glycemic. Now, if you guys know anything about low glycemic index and all that stuff, well, you know that you need to be, let's see, where's it at here? I'm looking on my computer right now. Okay, let's see here. Right. Okay. Now, on the glycemic chart, when you're looking at low glycemic versus high glycemic is your processed starches like breads and rolls and white pastas and stuff like that, processed foods. You want to look at the glycemic index, and anything that has a glycemic number of 55 or lower is basically low glycemic, and when you eat it, it's not going to spike your insulin way up high and then drop it back down again. Because see, that's not what we're doing. We're trying to stay at base as low as possible. And then if a medium glycemic food will have something somewhere range between 59 and 69. And then, of course, your white bread, your white rice, your your bagels, your donuts, stuff like that, you're going to be around 70 or higher, and you want to stay away from all that. But for example, if I want to do starchy foods and I'm trying to lose weight, I'm going through the 90-day program, it might be better to stick to the lower glycemic starches on your refeed day, okay? And that would mean that, stuff on your bread, you're looking at whole grains, multigrains, rye, and sourdough are the best for us. We strictly, that is the best source of low glycemic bread, is your rye bread and your sourdough breads. And if you have a harvest or a bread shop that makes it organic, that's even better. Cereals, you're looking at oatmeal, rolled oats, all brand oats, stuff like that. Those are low glycemic ones. Your beans, your lentils, chick beans, even baked beans, certain ones are really low glycemic. Butter beans, black beans, kidney, that's just some examples there. What about certain rice? You got your long grain brown rice, you have brown rice, you got certain rices that you can look at the packages and say that, well, that's low glycemic. And then, of course, you got your grains, which are quinoa is a great low glycemic food, and barley and buckwheat. If you guys like to make your own bread, make it with buckwheat. That'll keep your insulin at base when you're eating it on your refeed day. Okay, guys? So that kind of gives you an idea. This, like I said, this is for my 90-day online clients, to kind of a training video, that when you're doing a refeed day, try to stick to the lower glycemic starches that day. Now, that day you pick as your refeed day, if you want to go ahead and have starches at noon or at dinner time too, that's okay. That's fine, because if you're sticking to the lower glycemic ones, the next day you're going to hit ketosis much, much faster by the following day. Now, some of my clients are doing the ketone meters, the blood meters, where they're actually checking their blood for ketones. Some of them are doing the strips. And it's pretty cool to have them experiment and say, okay, have a higher glycemic starches for your last meal of the day, white potatoes or pastas or something like that. And then the next morning, take your ketone reading. And it's pretty crazy how they don't even, most of them won't even show any ketones. That means their body has not switched over to burning fat yet, because they still have a lot of glycogen in the liver and in the muscles. And the liver especially, like I said, it's all about the liver, not the muscle. So there's actually still glycogen stored up in the liver, and it hasn't depleted yet. Like I said, the liver needs to deplete the glycogen first before it starts producing the ketones, which is putting you into ketosis, which is putting your body into fat burning or fat adaptation, which means that you're taking the body fat, your stored body fat that you're trying to get rid of anyway. It's taking that and utilizing it as its primary fuel, and that's exactly what you want to do. Eventually, after time, your body will eventually be completely fat adapted, so used to burning fat because you're doing ketogenic diet with it, which is a high-fat diet, and you're combining it with the intermittent fasting. And so your body is so used to it that even if you have higher carbs at a certain day, your body is going to switch to the fat burning anyway. Like I said, and that's what I'm saying. So you don't have to deplete all the glucose in your muscle in order to be in ketosis. Then when you get to a point where you're completely fat adapted, it really doesn't matter how much glucose. Well, it might matter. Science has not quite got there yet, but it may not matter too much, because your body is so used to burning fat, it would rather burn the fat than the glucose or the glycogen in the muscle. So it's going to, whatever glycogen you have on the anti-inflammatory diet or the ketogenic diet, the glycogen is going to last much longer in that muscle, because the body loves to burn the body fat. It loves the fat. So it's not going to be using the glycogen that's in there, however much you have. it's going to stay there much, much longer before the body decides to dip in there to grab some for the brain or whatever. You see how that works? So the whole object of this whole thing, guys, is to become fat adapted. That's the object. And the body, you got to know this, the body doesn't switch from burning carbohydrates as its primary fuel to burning fat. You got to teach it over time, and every individual is not the same. So we can't tell you how quickly you'll get there, but we can watch it with the ketone strips, and even better with the ketone meters and the glucose meter. Mojo has a combined, is M-O-J-O, on Amazon. And that's how we monitor, and that's how we keep track of where we're at and how we adjust things. Okay, guys? So, guys, like I said, those of you that are on Facebook, go to my YouTube channel, type in Bill Mabry, subscribe to it, hit the bell. You'll be noticed of my new videos. Those of you that are already in my YouTube channel watching this, hit that bell and you'll be noticing it. Like I said, the next video I'm going to be doing is going to explain the difference between intermittent fasting or prolonged fasting and a ketogenic diet or an anti-inflammatory diet, what they have in common, but yet they're different. So that'll be the next video. So you guys have a great afternoon. I hope all of you have a very blessed day. We'll see you guys the next time around. Have a good one. Bye.